Ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for...
I told him when I come back, we're going swimming. So, tell everybody thank you for them. Скажи, дякую.
Дякую.
Не, английский.
Thank you.
Thank you, что? Very much. Еще раз.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Future president of Ukraine right here. All right.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome. It is October the 31st, 2012. It is 4:12 Eastern Standard Time. And yes, I'm looking for a Dylan. Dylan, where are you at? So Dylan and I were scheduled at 4 p.m. Eastern to be announcing his new documentary that is coming tomorrow on his channel. I'm going to do that regardless. To be quite honest, my concern now is for Dylan. So no problems there. He's out and about, I'm sure. So I have called Dylan. I've messaged him, and he will be hopefully hopping in here very, very soon. In the meantime, there are some things that I want to cover with you, because actually this entire stream, I'm completely set up for Dylan. However, a lot of things have happened, and I want to thank you guys for being here. And I can tell you right now that Ukraine is dropping a massive attack on Russia, and I will do my best to update you guys on that. I'm watching it unfold right now. The numbers are, at the minimum, 400 drones are in the air heading toward Moscow, Kaluga, Ryazan, and Tambov. So we're going to start there while I'm waiting for Dylan. If for some reason something is goofy, he'll get message to me, and I'm still going to preview his documentary on Pokrovsk. So it's incredible. I'm honored that I was able to show that first. And we'll start by saying thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you to all the mods. For you guys that have jumped in already, we say thank you. Christine McDonald, 7:13 a.m. this morning, 9.99 quid as a part of just a super sticker. Thanks there. So thank you, Christine McDonald. I7W. XTNT61X became a new crew member before the stream started. Thank you for that, XT. You know they exist. Hello to the world, and Paul Goudet Deborah. So there you go, Paul. You're getting a shout out from You Know They Exist. 222 super chat there. Linda from Australia, welcome. Linda, did you change your name? Wasn't it Linda S. Aw? Maybe my memory is goofy, but gifting 10 memberships. Dunk on you, one of our great moderators in the chat as well. Welcome, Hope Train Riders. Y'all have a good one. Slava Ukraini. And Dunk on you also gifting 10 memberships. I'm also watching for Dylan as well. So little dog, I see you there, and I'm gonna do my best. Little dog 664, Greg needs to go into parent mode and scold Dylan for always being late. Yeah, I'll get him good, that's for sure. Let's do this, guys. There is a lot happening right now. I also see Nick in here from End Time Independent News. So thank you for being here. Old man Tup in the house, been with me for a long time. What it is, my man. I like the new avatar there, old man Tup, OMT, and yes, I'm catching it. So thank you, brother. So guys, what we need to pay attention to right now is multiple things. Earlier today, I dropped a video confirming that Ukraine had destroyed an Oreshnik missile system last summer in Russia. That news has been hidden and covered by Russia, of course, and also Ukraine was able to keep it quiet, unbelievably so, in this era of social media, but they were able to keep it quiet until today when they released that video. So I do not know if you guys have seen that video yet. I want you to hear it and see it. In addition to that, we have the massive strike going on from Ukraine towards Russia. I want to share the map with you. I'm prepped on that. And in addition to that, there's two other things that we need to pay attention to. Number one, the Pentagon has cleared the way. They've given the green light now for Donald Trump to supply Tomahawks to Ukraine. So really out of the blue, to be, in my opinion, this news coming out this afternoon, just an hour or so ago, which is showing that negotiations with Russia are going absolutely nowhere, and we see that every day. So we need to keep our eyes on that. In addition to that, we also need to keep our eyes on Venezuela. And I know we're here to preview Dylan's video, and I'm going to give him every opportunity to hop in here before I play it, because I'm going to do what I promised. But ladies and gentlemen, the precursor for at least some type of strikes is unfolding right now. And of course, President Trump saying on the Air Force One, I'm not going to strike on the land, Venezuela. Well, that's, of course, exactly when you do strike on the land. We have Trinidad and Tobago going on full military alertness. In addition to that, we have confirmation that Venezuela has sent emergency requests. Now, are you ready for this? Drum roll, please. They have sent emergency requests to the nations of Russia, Iran, and China for support. We're talking military support, intelligence support, because they see it is imminently coming. We have a White House leak to the New York Times that there will be a regime change imminently happening in Venezuela, and it's getting ready to begin. So all of these precursors are out there. So something could happen. And as I have said from day one, which is now a long time ago, years and years ago, all of this is connected, ladies and gentlemen. Everything that you're seeing, the war in Ukraine, Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, the Middle East, Israel, Gaza, Hamas, Yemen, move down into Africa. There's so much happening in Africa right now. I'm getting ready to release a video on Africa because there is an injustice going on in South Sudan and nobody is talking about it, and it's unacceptable. The world's ignoring it, evidently, but we're not going to ignore it. Then you move over to South America, the destabilization, instability there in Venezuela and other nations. It's all connected around a narrative, and it is East versus West. It is China, Russia, Iran. We haven't even talked about India and the role they play kind of on both sides of the fence. Yesterday, we had Merz and Erdogan arguing over the Middle East from their platforms where they were discussing. We just have absolute chaos. And you guys know that when you deal with absolute chaos, you are talking about the Russian KGB, Soviet mind, modus operandi. That is what we do. They do. F. Oink gifting 50 memberships. The Hungarian connection. Big shout out to you there, F. Oink.
Slava Ukraini.
And by the way, you have one of the best names on the internet, F. Oink. Bad News Badger 6600, Danish Kroner 50. Dylan being late can be due to time change. Last week in Europe always messes up timing until America syncs up. That is true. And I don't want any fears or anything out there, but Dylan and I have been talking for the last couple of days, so we should be good. I'm keeping my messages out to him right now. I tried to call him a few minutes ago, so we'll keep our eye on it. There's plenty to talk about while we're waiting for Dylan to get in here. So I actually want to go back, and then maybe I'll have some more information that I'm watching right now because, oh, let's go. Hello. Thank you. Thank you. Katnia 3. Hugs to Greg for covering the atrocities going on in Sudan. Katnia, do you know why I haven't released a video on that yet? Because I'm having to blur out thousands. In one hospital, the UAE-backed militants killed 450 people. The whole screen's a blur, and nobody is talking about it. So thank you for that comment. It's important. And once again, all of this is connected. So now, if you missed it earlier, you don't have to go back and get it. Oh, you know what? I will say that as well. Go Blue Jays. Go ahead, run around 9275. Not that I'm a Toronto fan, but I hate the Dodgers. So there you go. Anyway, that's American baseball for those of you that are watching. It's the World Series right now. I want to go back and play this Zelensky video earlier about the Oreshnik because we need to start there. That was the big news earlier today. And then I want to talk about Pokrovsk a little bit and the front lines, and hopefully we get Dylan in here. So here we go. If you missed it earlier, here it is. Let's talk about the Oreshnik. They have strong capability. They have 3 shots. And it's not a secret, right? That's the Oreshnik. Oh, Mr. President, by the way, we've never mentioned this before, but briefly, I can confirm that one of the 3 Oreshnik systems was successfully destroyed on Russian territory at the Kapustin Yar by the forces of the GUR and the SBU. Well, this is important, especially for the future. It was a successful mission, and at that time, we did not say any words about it, and now time has passed, and we can talk about it. So they've already used one's been destroyed, and by the way, they may have 1, 2, or 3 shots left, but we believe that this year they didn't achieve what they were planning for, which is the production of up to 6 per year, and it's important for our colleagues worldwide. We can look at the maps. They're deploying the Oreshnik in Belarus, and we understand that the Oreshnik has approximately a radius of 5,000 kilometers, and there is a dead zone of the launch of about 700 kilometers. Europeans and those in Eastern Europe, our Baltic friends, and everyone else needs to be aware of the risk because we're provoked to destroy them. Well, hold on, let me finish and then you can ask your questions. Listen, it's important to mention about the Oreshnik system so we don't forget. This is crucial. We have a list that we're sharing with our friends. It's vital that everyone supports us with this information. There are 25 Russian manufacturers producing Oreshnik weapons and components every year, but still significant amount of work these companies are doing, and they are not even being sanctioned yet. It's extremely important to sanction these companies. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happened, and nobody's talking about it. And if you do not know or remember, the Oreshnik missile system is the large military system that Russia developed that can work. They did fire it over Dnipro without any warheads on it. And it goes up. Here is a picture of it right here. You're talking about a massive system here. And inside of that missile, once it goes up, it breaks open and 6 missiles then launch out and come down to the earth to their target. So you're talking about a massive system. So you have the head of the SBU telling Zelensky, hey, we destroyed one of those a year and a half ago. Now, of course, Zelensky already knew that. And seated at that table was Zelensky, the head of the SBU. Also sitting there was Subiga, who that was the back of the white hair you were looking at. That's the foreign minister. And then, of course, there was some press around. So this was a pretty high level release of information in front of a group of select journalists. And we will hear results coming back from Russia. We'll hear results coming back from other nations, maybe even the United States in regard to that, because they're talking about the companies that sanction or the companies that manufacture the Oreshnik or pieces of the Oreshnik. None of those companies are even sanctioned. So that's where we're at on the Oreshnik. Now, in addition, I told you guys that there is also a massive strike attack coming to Russia right now. This is the image. We have them headed towards Moscow. I'll come to a map, actually. So this is what we have, and this is just really since about the top of the hour, a half hour ago or so. But let me go to this image here, and I'm going to show you. These are headed right this direction, and they're on the way to Moscow, which is right there. They're headed to Voronezh, and they're headed towards Volgograd area. And in addition to that, there are already a lot of reports that there are explosions already happening in Voronezh and Belgorod. But we are talking a minimum, and this is what I just checked while I was playing that video, of 400 drones heading out. And you just saw the picture heading out all these directions. This is why when you see the picture I just shared with you, and when you see that picture, this is why Ukraine needs Tomahawks or even other types of missile systems. Why? Because a long-range missile or two inside of drone swarms is what is most effective. This is how Russia is striking Ukraine's energy grid very effectively. One thing that I will always do is tell you guys the truth to the best of my ability. These combo attacks of Shaheeds, now the Shaheeds that have jet engines that dive coming in from Russia. In addition to that, you mix in an Iskander or a Kinjal or any other type of ballistic or cruise missile. It's next to impossible to stop, especially when you're limited. Nice chat coming in here. I gotta take my glasses down to see it. You and Jake, bro, are my go-to for Ukraine info. You gentlemen bring integrity, humanity, and a fierce support for what is still good in our world. Enjoy the no. Man, I've got to get my eyes fixed. Enjoy the no prof zone. Slav Ukraine. Crusader Damien, thank you for that. Canadian 13.99, and we appreciate you. I also want to say thank you right now to the mods, because you guys just work that chat and do what you do. We appreciate you, because I'm really I don't want to put concern out there. I'm hoping maybe it's the time change. So we'll do our best to make sure of the information on Dylan. I know a lot of you guys wanted to be here to see that. But while I'm doing that, if you're here and you were seeing some advertisement on that, this is Dylan Burns' YouTube channel. It's Dylan Burns TV. And he also has a second YouTube channel, which is Dylan Burns Live. So these are Dylan's two channels right here and here. Dylan Burns Live, DBTB Live, and Dylan Burns TV. This is where the, I believe, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where the video will be dropping. And in just a few minutes, if I don't have him in here, I'm going to show the trailer for it. Now, I want to go to a second video while I'm catching up, and I'm going to look behind the scenes here, draw the curtain back, and see if I can find Dylan again. Today, Zelensky also talked about Pokrovsk, and this is going to be a lead-in because next I want to talk about Pokrovsk. I want to talk about Kupiansk. I personally, and I know Dylan as well, has spent a lot of time inside Pokrovsk and inside Kupiansk, and it's tough. It's very tough. But Zelensky talking about Pokrovsk today, and this will be the perfect lead-in for me to push down into that area of the map and explain to you what's going on there. Here we go. This is President Zelensky earlier today. For some reason, we have different viewpoints on the maps of the real combat operations in Ukraine. Now, for Russia, it's perfectly understandable, but Ukraine, Europe, United States of America, you see, the situation in Pokrovsk is difficult. It is where Russia has put so many forces. You know, in that direction, they have 170,000 enemy forces concentrated, and that is a lot. Really a lot. And this very morning, I spoke with the commander-in-chief. There are no changes in Pokrovsk. There are Russians in Pokrovsk, and our forces are destroying them. Gradually, we are destroying them because we need to protect our personnel as well. They're just running around and hiding in the buildings, and that's not effective. I don't know, but let's start with one fact, and that is the enemy first declared that they would take Pokrovsk any day now. That was 1 year and 3 months ago. During this time, they've advanced 7 kilometers. This supposedly mega-powerful military specialist army of Russians, in quotes, of course, have only advanced 7 kilometers. Listen, guys, you need to understand. It is a serious, serious battle for Pokrovsk. They, the Russians, were tasked with capturing Pokrovsk. They took and go after this city because they could not take Sumy. They couldn't take Kupiansk. And they know that they will lose Kupiansk. Now the cleanup is happening. It's not easy, but the situation is clear. Our forces have reached the river and blocked them. They can't even pass through individually. Not possible. It's difficult, but it's clear they're going to lose. They've already lost, right? Dobropilia's situation, Zaporizhia's situation is clear too. They'll fight for it desperately, while Putin claims he'll go to Pokrovsk. Well, if he comes to Pokrovsk, we'll all applaud that. We understand how this will end. So there you have it, guys. I can't give it to you any clearer than that. That is not a political commentator. That is the president of Ukraine. That is the head of the SBU, Security Services of Ukraine. That is the foreign minister of Ukraine talking directly about the situation. It's not somebody's opinion. And then we evaluate it. Well, before we go any further, because now I want to show you Pokrovsk, and I have updated news on the drones. Looking like about 450 drones that Ukraine has launched, and now they are rotating, I'll show you, towards Moscow. Petter Olsen, Swedish Non-Smoking Initiative, Swedish Kroner 269. Thank you for that, with love to Ukraine. Mark Biscu, our dear friends there, Mark and Elaine in Canada, 27.99. Looking forward to this one. Thanks for all you do. Flamingos to Yella Buga. Slava Ukraini. Yes, sir, my friend. And Linda S., Australia. Thank you, Maj. You're the best. Australian 20. Yes, they are. They are the best. I've gone fishing 48 482, $2 super chat. When can we expect joint video with Paul Warburg? You know, that's a great idea, and I am writing it down right now. Everybody that knows my lives, I write stuff down and then I jump on it. So there you have it, Paul Warburg. I think that's a great idea. I enjoy his information as well. All right, now let's go to the map, and I want you to see this, guys, on Pokrovsk. I'll go to that image here, and we're going to come in and take a look. First, what I'll do is I'll show you about 2 minutes ago, I have an update on the drone flight. So they're going this way and this way in a mass swarm. Now they have rotated this way. So a large swarm is in this area here, and you have Kaluga and you have Moscow or Moskva. Okay, so they're heading this direction. This is really great news, and we'll see what unfolds for it. But once again, if we had more, I know we have some, but if we had more cruise/ballistic type missiles to put into the middle of this, oh, hello, then you're going to talk about unstoppable, game-changing attacks. So we do have an update. And if you're just joining right now, that is probably unintelligible drawing for you, but that's drone paths. All right, now let's take a look and go down into Pokrovsk on what President Zelensky was talking about. If you guys do not know, and I don't want to assume that you do, let's do it this way. And I'm not stalling. I'm enjoying talking to you guys about the front. People have been asking me to do a live about the front, and let's do it. And we'll continue to wait for Dylan. And if he's not here in a few minutes, we're going to roll his promo. I'm going to roll it a couple times. It's fantastic. But in case you guys do not know, this is just for location. Kyiv here in the center, Ukrainian border with Poland over here, Belarus, Romania, Moldova. And I know I'm not drawing it straight for you, but this is the location. Other cities you hear about, like 2 days ago, Vinica. The energy grid was completely destroyed in Vinica. That is here. You hear about Lviv all the time. That's here. Or Lutsk, Rivne, or Zhytomyr. All of this in Western Ukraine. You've been hearing a lot about Ivano-Frankivsk being attacked a lot. In fact, a story about Ivano-Frankivsk here, when I was coming out of Ukraine my last time, just 6 weeks or so ago, 8 weeks, 7 weeks, I was on a train. We're rolling out. These ladies are sitting there, and I get a phone call. And it's one of my buddies calling me, checking on me, and I start speaking to him in Russian. I speak Russian, working on my Ukrainian, but speaking Russian to him. And we're talking, 10 minutes or so, all about different things happening. And I hang up, and the ladies in the train wagon with me look at me like this and said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm a Ukrainian." They said, "Oh, no." And I pull out my Ukrainian document, because I have a Ukrainian passport, resident document, and my American passport. And they go, "Oh, you were speaking Russian really good, and you were trying to mix in a little Ukrainian." I said, "Well, I'm working on it." And they said, "Well, great." I said, "Where are you guys from?" They said, "We're from Ivano-Frankivsk." I said, "Oh, you're from Ivano-Frankivsk." And if I go back to the map, guys, not that one. Oh, that's the preview. You didn't see that. If I go back to Ivano-Frankivsk, I almost let the cat out of the bag. Hit the wrong button. Once again, Ivano-Frankivsk way over here. These ladies were in the train, and their city for the first time had been hit, but with a massive strike of drones and missiles, and their town was de-energized, and they were leaving. Their families were sending them out of the city into Poland until the town got repaired. So if you think the war only affects eastern and central Ukraine, or you hear these big stories about Kherson or Kramatorsk, Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernigiv, guys, that's just the big stories. There are little stories that are equally as big for Ukrainians that happen 24/7 every day, 24/7, 365. Ukrainians' lives are being affected throughout the entire nation. And an overwhelming majority of the stories you never will hear. And by the way, if you didn't pick up on it, they were not mad at me for speaking Russian and working on my Ukrainian. They were grateful that I was there working to help Ukraine. All right, now let's go over to Pokrovsk. So we talked about all of these regions, Kyiv here in the very center. Pokrovsk way over here in southeastern Ukraine. And this is where we're going to go look. So when you hear President Zelensky talking about Pokrovsk, we're down in this region here. So let me erase that out and we'll move down into it. I'll give you this look first. Dnipro, huge city. Zaporizhia, huge city. How huge? 1 million. 1 million. These are mega cities. And when you go into the metro area, it even goes beyond that. Very industrial cities. Another place that you're hearing talked about, and I'm pushing over toward Pokrovsk, is Kamyansky, which is located right here. It's in a suburb of Dnipro, basically. I've been there many times coming through Dnipro and Kamyansky. This city has been hit a lot lately trying to de-energize this entire region because there's a lot of power generation in Kamyansky. So we keep our eyes there. Now, we're actually going to go all the way down here into Pokrovsk. Now, some of the key cities here that you will maybe have heard about, but you definitely will hear more about, of course, Dnipro, and you can see this indication here where it's just been struck, Zaporizhia. You're going to hear more about Pavlograd. You've been hearing about Dobropilia. This is what Zelensky was just talking about. Konstantinivka. I just did a video on Konstantinivka yesterday. Druzhkivka, Kramatorsk, and Slavyansk. Look at the shelling that's coming into Slavyansk. Those are indicative of glide bombs. You come down the main highway out of Dnipro, through Pavlograd, down through Shakhtarsky, all these places so well. You come straight into Pokrovsk. And then the main highway would go this way, straight over and head towards Bakhmut and Kramatorsk. Of course, you can see that is all occupied by Russians now. In fact, all of this road here, once you get down to the zone, and I'm going to zone in more, is basically impassable due to drone activity. So let's go down into Pokrovsk. I'm still checking on Dylan here, and I do not have him yet. Now I want to just make sure my buddy's okay there. All right, guys, we're going to talk about Pokrovsk here. This is the best image I can give you. Let me pull back. Here we go. This is looking good. When President Zelensky today talking about Pokrovsk, let's talk about it. Here you have two main cities, key cities. You have Pokrovsk, which is there, and you can see that it has Russian occupation on the southwestern corner. Also, you have what I call a sister or twin city of Mirnograd. Okay? Mirnograd. That basically means peace or it could be translated world, mir, but crazy. You're hearing a lot about Rodinsky, and then up this way is Dobropilia. But I want to focus on these two cities. I'm going to leave that drawing like that. This is the main highway that comes in to Pokrovsk. You probably saw a city sign where the Russians had hung their flag coming into Pokrovsk. And then the Ukrainians took the flag down with a drone. That happened right here, right there. Across the street from that is a gas station. And I've 50 times been at that gas station getting fuel and hanging out. It's a Volg. It's not OPSEC. It's public information, and been at that sign many times, but that's where that was. So the pressure is coming here. And as President Zelensky was talking about, he says that individual units are getting inside like this. They're starting to get inside of Mirnograd and trying to hold a position, hold a building. And this is what Russia's tactics are. And then they'll try to move up more, and they'll sacrifice many, many, many people to do that. I got a message for Dylan. He's okay. So I'll finish out this Pokrovsk, and then we'll focus totally on Dylan. Come on, man. All good. So let me finish on Pokrovsk for you guys. And then Dylan and I would have talked about this anyway, but then I can focus on his documentary. So what the problem is here, and we do have information coming within the last couple of hours that Ukraine is counterattacking up here to try to open up logistical routes. But the problem is this, and I'm going to make it very clear for you guys to understand why so many people are struggling with Pokrovsk, and there are many different opinions. Down here in Suky Yar, in Lusivka, in southern Mirnograd, in Rig, along these areas, we have Ukrainian positions. And because of drones and the overwhelming pressure of artillery and drones, it's difficult to move. And the concern is if, and this is what Russia has been saying, Putin saying, well, we've got 5,500 encircled down here. No, they're not encircled. They're under immense pressure, but they're not encircled. The issue is logistically, can get supplies in with drones, can get food, medicine, all of that with drones. That's how it happens. But we can't move people with drones. So this is really the biggest frontline story. President Zelensky himself talking about it. So Ukraine trying to relieve pressure so that they can have access down here to go in and to come out and to do what is necessary. So I hope that helps you guys understand Pokrovsk even more. Let me do this now. I've got Dylan talking to me here. He is jumping in just a moment. Let me go to the chat. Okay, whoever was out there in the stream earlier and you said Dylan is on the wrong time zone, you get this.
Слава Україні!
That's what you get because you're right. Now, I'm seeing in the chat, so they're basically encircled. I like to call it straight. They're not encircled, but the further south that you go in this pocket, the more critical it is. For example, from here to here is 7.65 kilometers. So basically 4.8 miles. From here to here, and I'm looking red zones. Hope you guys are enjoying this breakdown of the map. 6.7 kilometers, 4.2 miles. If you look at a micro pocket from here to here, 3.47 kilometers or 2.2 miles. If you come even down deep, you are 6 kilometers or 3.8 miles. If I come down to Suki Yar and bring it all the way out, let's come all the way out to here, 16 kilometers or 10 miles. So no, it's not surrounded. Surrounded would be if this is what surrounded would be. That would be surrounded. But it's tough. It's very tough logistically. A few days ago, I shared a video and I showed recent video of drones flying over Pokrovsk. And literally, you're just looking up in the air and there's just drones everywhere. So I know Dylan will have much more to say about this, and we are getting him in. Link above. I'm talking to him now. He should be popping in here any moment. And then we'll focus on Dylan. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys looking at Pokrovsk there. Let's do this. How about a flyboard to fly them out at a night by a person? It's next impossible. Adam Rounds gifting 5 memberships. Thank you for that. Linda from Australia also $20 super chat. Hit that like button, peeps. Thank you. And yes, Dylan is making sure his lovely hair is fine. And I'm looking at a screen right here where I'll see him when he gets in. I've got the trailer ready to go. And he'll be coming in just a moment. Now, the other place that I think it would be worthy of me showing you guys is Kupiansk. Kupiansk is the other place that President Zelensky was talking about today. And there are so many different types of maps on Kupiansk. But if you remember, and I'll go here, President Zelensky talking about Kupiansk. And if you're wondering where this is, maybe I should be a little bit more fair to you guys and not assume that you know. Kharkiv is here, Kharkiv. And we're talking now about this northeastern area right here, okay? The Kupiansk area. This is it. President Zelensky, because the pro-Russian maps have been very aggressive in coloring this in way down, acting as if Ukrainians are surrounded in here. And Zelensky coming out today and saying, no, that's not actually true. Kupiansk is very difficult. Yes, they've taken Mirny here. Yes, they have a majority of the central and north part of the city, but Ukraine has been able to push back. And you heard President Zelensky talking about they can't cross the river. If they cross the river, they're done. And that is what you're looking at here. If I take you into this map, just maybe a click closer, you'll be able to see it better. right here. So this river is what President Zelensky's talking about. And this actually shows it the best on Kupiansk. So let me change this to blue, purple, make it a little bluer. There we go. So Ukraine holding here, and this is Kupiansk. Ukraine holding Sobolivka. Ukraine holding Uvaleni. And they're able to defend this section very well of Kupiansk. President Zelensky today was talking about this river. You can see it actually comes from here, comes from way up here actually, but down and down. And this is a river basin, goes down to Sadovi and Kupiansk Vuslovi. Okay. You're saying, okay, how far are you talking about here? I'll look that up in just 1 second. But this river here is what President Zelensky was talking about when he says they can't cross it. We've got them blocked here. We've got them blocked. So Ukraine holding and feels that they can counter offensive and push the Russians back out of northern and northeastern Kupiansk and back even across the river here. And once again, get control of this area. This is what President Zelensky was talking about on Kupiansk. Let me answer my own question here. Center of Kupiansk down to Sadovi, 5 kilometers, 3 miles. So it's not that far, but fortunately the river is able to hold and assist Ukraine. So I hope that helps you guys understand that as well. Let me get back to the chat here. Maximus 8992 with the right weapons. Here it is. Let's see. That's Johnny Nedregard, Norwegian island dweller. Hello, Hope Train, Slava Ukraini, Norwegian Kroner 22. And then we also have, where was it at? I think it's here. It's somewhere. There's so much going on. No, it's not there. Well, I've got it over here. Maximus, member for 6 months, 8992. With the right weapons supplied, Ukraine will win. I completely agree with that. But it's not just going to take the right weapons. In addition to that, it's going to take the intestinal fortitude of partners and friends to hold the line economically, hold the line mentally, socially. I can tell you, Ukraine, they can't invent more soldiers. And we know that mobilization has been a challenge. It's been an issue. Ukraine doing the very best they can with that. But the fact remains, Russia has a larger pool, especially when Russia right now is using a lot of far eastern Russians that are basically used as cannon fodder. They've used North Koreans and will continue to. In addition to that, they've also used mercenaries from Far East, from Southeast Asia. They've used mercenaries from Africa. Let me get Dylan in here now. So let me make sure I get him this. So the reality is, here we go. Russia has more of an expendable force of soldiers than they're recruiting all the time. Additionally, let's call it the way it is as I'm getting him in here. Right now, the story is growing. This boy, he's something. He's coming. So when you look at the big picture, especially when we think about what is expanding now with Africa, Venezuela, Iran, China, India. Listen, President Trump's trip to Asia was not a winner. Japan still buying Russian LNG. It's 9% of their supply. China still going to be buying Russian oil. President Trump said that himself. Well, they got a lot of people over there and they need a lot of Russian oil. Not really anything I can do about that. I mean, so the things that we need to happen in addition to Ukraine having the strong weapons and fighting is that international pressure. So, with that said, you guys are now fully updated for an hour, and I am happy to introduce on my channel. He's been with me before, but if you're new, and I know a lot of you in here waiting, here we go. I have the man here. Let me check your audio there, Dylan. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. Now let me adjust your audio in here. Give me a check one more time.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. Welcome, brother.
Happy to be here. Sorry, the devil worked hard when creating daylight savings to confuse God's children. And I think he was very effective with me, very effective in leading me off the righteous path.
Well, here's the reality, man. I know we're going to be talking about Pokrovsk, and I'm going to be asking you some questions that I've prepared for you. And we're actually, you've given my channel the honor to show a trailer of your documentary that's being released tomorrow. But in addition to that, I want people to be able to hear from your experience. And I know we've got a little bit more time. You'll be going live on your own channel here in a little bit. But I went ahead and went live. I figured you were maybe asleep or something. And then somebody in the chat said, I don't think he knows that we switched time yet or something. So it all worked out perfectly.
And in the last week or so, I saw people say, Dylan, like at the start of my stream, I'll say the time, and I'm so used to saying the same time. Like, Dylan, I think you're an hour off. I was like, nah, my chat's messing with me again. They're trying to screw with me. They're trying me to start saying the wrong time at the start of the show. I don't believe you. I was a denier, but I've been made a fool.
Well, all is good, and now I've done the map work. I went through the Frontline with folks over the last hour. I've updated them on Zelensky's statements today. I talked about the big drone attack that's underway right now, and it'd be nice to throw some nice ballistics inside of those 300 drones. So we've covered all of that and talked all about that. Now we can focus on you. So guys, if you're here on my channel.
Did we win?
Did we win? We always
win. Did I miss it while I was asleep?
No, you didn't miss it.
Damn,
you didn't miss it. You're going to be a part of it. We'll make sure you're awake. So all of that's underway. But guys, if you're here on my channel and you've never experienced Dylan Burns, I've already been sharing his links on the stream earlier. But it's right here, and we can go this. Dylan Burns TV and Dylan Burns Live. Which channel is it going to be the documentary going on?
Dylan Burns TV. That's
Dylan
where I
Burns
release
TV.
my full-form documentaries.
Right here, guys. So if you have not subscribed, and I haven't, I'm going to subscribe to your live. So now there's another one. I only watched your live channel. So now I got it. So Dylan Burns TV, it's right here. And the documentary dropping tomorrow. Do you have a time on it tomorrow?
It's going to be something like 8 or 9 a.m. This is it's releasing in the early afternoon for Ukrainians, and also in the morning for, of course, the most civilized people on the East Coast of the United States, not West Coast. East
Correct.
Coast.
And we both from the East Coast. But right now, if I was you, I probably wouldn't say what time it's going to be released, because it'll probably be 1 hour later than when you said it.
That I said 8 or 9. I'm giving myself a time
There
zone.
you go. So, guys, I love watching Dylan's channels. I do a lot of work in the studio, nonstop processing information, do a lot of translation work, which takes forever to get out to you guys. But Dylan, I enjoy popping his lives on to watch when I'm working. He's a political commentator. He's an activist. He's been involved in political campaigns. He's a war correspondent. He's a hero for Ukraine, fighting for what's right, passionate, policy, politics, international, domestic here in the U.S., you name it. Did I cover it pretty good?
I think you covered it quite, with expansion, much aperture, much depth.
Well, okay, we were unable to do our green room chat, so I want to show the trailer for the documentary. And you good to go about a half hour or so, and then you have time to get ready for your live?
I'll have plenty of time. You can have all the time you need, Greg.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good. All right, well, let's do this, guys. Let me ask you this first before we go, and we'll play it a couple of times. It's so good, guys. So good in a it's a relative term, I guess, but the production and what Dylan's work is phenomenal. It's going to put you there. But let me ask you this question for people on my channel that may not know who you are. What initially drew you to Ukraine? You're an American, you're from the East Coast, and what pulled you there to focus so much on Ukraine over the last few years?
I think one big part of it was just how conclusively people talked about the country. I heard, at the start of this war, I would not consider myself an expert on it. Like, I knew what was happening here in broad strokes. I had read headlines. I had listened to some personal testimony. And going to Ocean City, Maryland, it's a carny town growing up. And there's a lot of Ukrainians that come in and, they'll talk about how they ended up there. And so I had some interest, but I didn't have a depth of knowledge. And so when the invasion happened, as many people do, I try to rely on those who are educated on the matter. I try to listen to people who have big titles like professor in front of their name, maybe like a Professor John Mearsheimer or a Jeffrey Sachs or any other number of intellectual powerhouses that much of academia relies on when it comes to foreign affairs and particularly the Russians. And listening to these conclusions of the war, it won't happen. Well, if it does happen, it'll happen quickly, it'll be over fast, and it'll be done and dusted. And none of these conclusions seem to pan out. And I was watching as the maps were changing on the front line, and each day was passing, and I was saying things on my channel, watching it like, well, it doesn't really look like they have enough forces, but you don't really know, because it was just impossible for me to think that all these people with all these fancy titles could really be that wrong, but they were. And after seeing how wrong they were, after, I waited till April and, the great collapse did not occur. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that I made, $10,000, $15,000, probably the most money ever made in streaming. Not exactly, Warren Buffett over here, but I thought about how I could use this money, and I thought either work on a studio or go figure it out myself. And I reckoned I couldn't do any worse than the people that came before me.
So your first time inside Ukraine was 2022.
April of 2022.
Gotcha.
So going on 4 years now.
Great. So I've been working in Ukraine since 98, and unfortunately showing my age there. But I think you learned for sure the secret sauce that the world did not know, the professors do not know, the academia do not know, and that is the indomitable, unbreakable spirit of Ukrainian people and their will and desire to stand for their freedom and their future. And if you want to get something accomplished, just tell a Ukrainian they can't do it and get out of the way. I was coming back out of the South, over a year ago, and I had Johnny Pierce with me from ATP Geopolitics and my partner Zhenya, and we also had Pierre, who's well-known supporter and helper of Ukraine with base and other extractions. They work with like White Angels and all this stuff. And we're coming out of the very south. In fact, we had just left Pokrovsk. We were coming out of Pokrovsk and we were working our way on the way to BLUESKY, which translates White Church, just south of Kyiv. And Pierre, sitting in the back of our battle bus, which is a Nissan Navara, broke the door. And it's freezing cold, snowing. The window went down, wouldn't go back up, and like, it's a problem. It's the middle of the night. We're freezing, the wind, the snow, the ice. I literally watched Zhenya take apart the car door with a Swiss Army knife, fix the electronics in the window, put it back together, fix it, window rolled up, and goes, let's go, guys, no problem. Welcome to Ukraine. That's the Ukrainian spirit, and I'm sure you've seen it so many times.
I've seen it in a lot of strange ways. I remember with Dima, this is a friend of mine. I would say somebody who's enveloped in, we'll put it politely, like Ukrainian street culture. You know, he's very Dnipro, I guess is the way somebody could put it. But you know, when a crisis happens, when a disaster happens, a lot of times you don't get like the gold medalists with all the Nobel Peace Prize. Sometimes you get the guy from his street corner who's like, hey, bro, get in the car or die. Let's do it. And that's who he was. And when I was going into Chasiv Yar, and this is when the Russians were just getting on this, we're well within artillery range. We're bombing the city, preparing to enter it. And we were going there to talk to locals to see if we could get anybody else to leave. And as we're entering the city, and we're like, okay, let's get our body armor on, let's get ready, because like we would be at one house, we'd move to another, and the last house we were just at would get bombed. I mean, it was that type of aggression at that point. And I look over at Dima, and he picks up his body armor, and it's like torn almost in half. It's kind of like limp. It's like a limp mess, and he's just like, he just kind of like haphazardly wraps it around his body, gets duct tape, then wraps the body armor around his body. He's like, look, now I can go there. And I swear, if it wasn't for the fact that I had a camera, he probably wouldn't even bothered.
We were we were coming out of Orikov and had the same thing happen, where we were at a place and left, and a couple minutes later it was hit with artillery. Of course, they know. And so the Ukrainians with me goes, oh, look, they just hit where we were. No problem. We're not there. So, I mean, that's just the way it is, man. All right, let's talk about Pokrovsk. And then we'll show the clip for the first time. I'm going to show it a couple times. And so you have a documentary coming out tomorrow. And your core focus on this is Pokrovsk. So what can people expect tomorrow?
People can expect two journeys, roughly speaking. I focused a lot on military action and military embeds. You know, I came here under the idea of wanting to show what it was like to experience the war and the militaries who's experienced the war. But I have another part of the documentary, which is the refugee and displaced persons. And so essentially we follow two pathways. One pathway is the path from outside the gates of Avdiivka and Halisanivka with grad rocket teams, to then Soldovi with artillery teams who are talking about all the problems they're facing when it comes to pay, all the problems they're facing when it comes to getting flanked, all the problems they're facing when it comes to manpower shortages, the drone increased risk, and you get to hear from their perspective. And then we also shift over to the pathway of a displaced person, from where they get picked up to refugees, to drop-off point, refugee centers, many of them religiously affiliated because they're the ones that dominate on the front line, is usually Christian, whether it be Protestant or Orthodox, usually some religious type Christian aid organizations. And so we try to follow both of these pathways, because I think to tell the tale of the city of Pokrovsk, a city is made up of its people. And so I put a lot of time and also talking to displaced people. So I try to tell the story of the defense of Pokrovsk and the story of the people of Pokrovsk. So
the story, though, begins Avdiivka, and then where did you say, Soldovi?
It goes from Halisanivka, which is right outside of Avdiivka. Then it goes to Soldovi. Then it goes to Pokrovsk itself as the Russians get closer and closer. We were outside Soldovi the day it fell.
All right, guys, let's do this. I'll make it easy for you. I've been in all these places that he's talking about. You're talking about wonderful people in these places that are now occupied, but he's talking about, of course, here is Avdiivka, and this is outside of Donetsk. Straight up is Toretsk, which is famous, and then you push up into Konstantinivka and Kramatorsk, Druzhkivka, and Slavyansk. And then he talks about this push over to Seldovy, and then the story goes to Pokrovsk. So this is the narrative, and let me get rid of this and go back to this. Avdiivka, Seldovy, Pokrovsk. Yeah, I also spent a lot of time down in these places, man, like Karakova. All the cities here. Down here is where Constantinople is, right there. And a lot of time in Shevchenko. So the type of people you're talking about and encountering is just going to be incredible. I can't wait to see the whole thing tomorrow. And of course, guys, if you're wondering, yes, here is the massive city of Donetsk. All right, so this is what you're talking about. So let me ask you this next question. Actually, let's play it one time first. How about that? The trailer. And then let me ask you some questions. All right, I'm going to play the trailer this time with you and I and the image. And then I'll play it again later, full screen. Let's do this right here.
Run.
Ну, всі говорять, що в їхніх планах, типа, Покровськ взяти до зими. Ця точка їм стратегічно дасть дуже велику потужність.
Кожен день продовжується, а цей чим раз тим більше, типу, ну...
Every other 10 minutes there's explosion happening within the city.
Так, хату на хаті б'ють і все. Бою днем и півночі.
Ну, это как будто вот какой-то зомби-апокалипсис прошелся в каких-то фильмах ужасов. Понимаешь, что рано или поздно дойдут, и оставаться здесь будет очень-очень опасно.
Дроны.
Drone.
Съебать. У нас попали ребята уже неоднократно под работу дронов.
Military or civilian, Russians love to blow up, and it's easy to see.
0537! Оце в нас то, що в нас є засіб, який проти FPV. Вогонь!
Я вірю реальним станом справ на війні, тут миром щось не попахує. А насправді треба бути сильним, тоді можливо буде мир. Сильних не б'ють.
There you have it, guys. Saturday, November 1st, Dylan Burns TV. And we will watch it again. And just remember, it's right here. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you go subscribe to Dylan Burns TV. Drop time tomorrow, approximately between 8 and 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or we can say between 8 and 9 p.m. Dylan Burns Standard Time. And we'll have it nailed down. Dude, phenomenal. Truth. I really liked what the one guy said there. It doesn't smell like peace. And peace through strength. Whew.
Can I just say how
you can say whatever you want to say?
I sometimes feel like asking these questions, which I know have to be asked. But when I'm in these rooms and I hear like grad rockets slamming into the building, and a piece of like ceiling falls on you, and then you're like, so today was supposed to be the ceasefire. Is it ceasing? I sometimes feel like I'm just pretending to be blind for them, but I generally they understand that I'm asking for the people that are not there. But I always worry that they won't, and they'll just look at me like I'm a little slow in the head.
Well, you're not. You're just passionate, man.
I'm slow to get on the show.
Well, that's okay. It was perfect timing. Everything's perfect timing, man. It's good. So how long did it take you to make this documentary, and what were some of your biggest surprises that you encountered specifically? How much time we got in this?
This started in July of last year. So at this point, considering the last clip, the conclusion clip of the documentary ends this month in October, about a year and 3 months, something roughly around that time. Now, originally, I didn't know that it was going to be the Battle of Pokrovsk. When I started filming outside of Halotsinivka, I just knew that Avdiivka had just fell, that this was a major point in the war, that there wasn't a lot of defenses between Avdiivka and these other major settlements. And I was really covering the aftermath of Avdiivka. But like these pages all kind of meld together. These stories all stack on top of each other. And what the story of Pokrovsk is the story of many, many other cities, and a story that we're going to see and keep seeing again and again and again, which is these cities will keep getting burnt to the ground, shelled to the ground. These people will keep getting forced from their homes, given no option but to leave the communities they've lived in their entire life until the Russian army is stopped. Because every time the Russian army approaches one of these cities, this ends up being the outcome for the community. And so I was very worried once I saw them approach Soldove and Soldove collapsed, that next would be Pokrovsk. And so at that point, I started thinking about filming in Pokrovsk, focusing on Pokrovsk, because most of my journalism has been, I'm with an artillery team. Okay, I'm with a drone team. They're on the other side of the country. Let's go to the other side of the country. And I wanted to just stop for a second and say, we need to add some aperture. We need to add some depth to this specific area. We need to make people say, oh, that's not just a mountain. That's a coal mountain. That's a coal mountain that the local miners work off. The local miners, which are digging trenches to protect their own village homes. And once you add that aperture, I think it helps people understand what's going on here a lot better. And so I decided that I'm going to start doing that more. First is Pokrovsk. Next is Konstantinivka. I've almost finished with that documentary. So I want it to be a series of documentaries on the defense of the Donetsk region.
Well, you have chosen the two key places. And it seems like you've, with all due respect, you kind of fell into the Pokrovsk story by being ahead of the curve a little bit, but now you've learned. And of course, Konstantinivka is being leveled block by block. I did an update on that, I think 2 days ago, and I showed 5 different locations, and then I went in from Google Earth and I said, okay, this is the red building, now it's destroyed. This is this building, now it's destroyed, and just showing how it is in logical order of what they're doing. Talk to us a little bit about civilians you encounter, and how many, in your opinion, still around, and what is life like for them? I mean, it's obvious what it's like for them, but in your perspective.
So I've spent a decent amount of time with civilians with the Pokrovsk axis and civilians in Konstantinivka as of recent. And a lot of times, well, there's some differences. I would say that the people in Konstantinivka are particularly stubborn. They really, people who like Konstantinivka really like Konstantinivka. But there seems to be a general trend of...
Let me interrupt you there. So I've spent a lot of time myself in both cities, Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. I mean, I was working in Konstantinivka and Kramatorsk 17 years ago when I first started going there. And for me personally, I like Konstantinivka a lot better than Pokrovsk too. It's just beautiful town, and you have the loop there, and Drushkivka and Kramatorsk. I mean, it's just, for me personally, I like it there too. And then you would go down to the river in Chasiv Yar and Bakhmut. It's beautiful, beautiful. And now razed to the earth. So I understand why the people of Konstantinivka are a little bit more stubborn. But Pokrovsk too. Beautiful city. Some of the best memories I had right on the main street in Pokrovsk as the war is coming, hanging out with soldiers and eating pizza and staying in somebody's apartment there, you name it. And you know exactly where I'm talking about, there on the center street where all the industry was by the park. But anyway, back to the civilians, specifically in Pokrovsk, maybe.
I will say that, Dobrapila, I actually spent quite a lot of time in Dobrapila. That's where I would like to... It became a logistical point for Ukrainian armed forces. But I like village living. That's something I discovered while being in Ukraine. I love being away from any center of power, where the cops are gone, where the authorities are gone, where you mind your own business. You get to hang out with the locals, hang out with a goat, drink a little bit, chat a little bit. I love village culture. I really do. And Dobrapila had some really, really good people. As for the civilians, I think it's 4 groups. I think it can be categorized widely into 4 groups. The first group is pensioners. These are people who make about $150 a month off their pension, and they have no clue how they're going to stretch that out into Kiev and major metropolitan area wages to be able to support themselves and not be a burden on their living family members if they have living family members. Some of them have family that are calling for them to leave. We would go to these some evacuations at the very bottom of Konstantinivka, the most dangerous parts of Konstantinivka. We drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours down brick roads, already not great to drive down, that are going uphill and have been smashed by artillery and mortars, only to get there and have the people say, no, we don't want to leave, after their family had convinced us to go out and make these rides. So there's people who don't want to be that burden. There's the stubborn, which a lot of these two people kind of overlap, but these are people who, I've lived here forever. My grandmother lived here during the Nazis, and I'm going to live here during this, and you're not going to get me to go off my home. And, good luck with those people. But sometimes I remember one instance, there was one woman who was quite stubborn. It wasn't until she was literally launched out of her front door by a bombardment in her nightgown that she eventually took out the business card out of her pocket and called the evacuation people and said, so I think I need an evacuation. But if you wait too long, as is the case right now in Pokrovsk, you can't get out of Pokrovsk anymore. I mean,
Correct.
The last time I was in Pokrovsk, they weren't evacuating the bodies. There's so many shallow graves all across Pokrovsk, dug in the front yard of people's apartments by neighbors, because what are you going to do? Are you going to load this body that weighs as much as, a body would, when you could put a living person in a car to get them out of there with the same space in the back of a truck? Because people are not making aid runs like they used to. The last two groups I would categorize as both the waiters. These are people who believe that when the Russian army takes this town, that the guns will stop. That doesn't necessarily even mean that they love the Russian army. It just means, even though there are some that do, small minority, that they think that Russia is so powerful that, that their image of this like unrelenting force of nature, less a nation, is accurate, and therefore do not fight against nature. Once they take over, then things will quiet down, things will be okay, and then I won't have to hear the grad rockets slamming into my backyard anymore. And then the last group is draft dodgers. These usually, if there's a young man around my age or slightly older on the front line, strangely enough, I know it's weird to say this, but to avoid joining the Ukrainian armed forces and being recruited at a checkpoint, many of these people live in frontline communities where the bombing is the worst in order to get away from the war. Does it make a lot of sense? Not necessarily, but the reputation that the Ukrainian infantry and that some of the Ukrainian armed forces has built has led to these people preferring to be in Konstantinivka under bombardment rather than in Ukrainian infantry. Mind you, I've never been in a situation where people getting evacuated from a frontline town get drafted at a checkpoint. I've never seen them do that. I think that would be even too far gone for even the Tesetka, and the Tesetka has a pretty bad reputation here. But I think those are the main four groups of civilians on the front line at this point. I got to give an honorable mention: the drunkards. They're living the same way during the war as they lived before the war, and I have to give them an honorable mention because I was talking to my friend Eugene, who does a ton of evacuations out of Konstantinivka, and I met this kid who was evacuated the day before I got there, whose parents were both drunk in Konstantinivka as they were just like running around and playing. And so there's also questions of people who, or whether or not they're taking the best decision for their children, because obviously stuff like that is putting some kids in danger. And there are still some children in Konstantinivka, even with the forceful evacuation orders.
Yes. And I will tell you, one of the reasons that you always have an invitation on my channel, or we can partner together, is a twofold. Number one, you put your boots on the ground. So you're putting your money where your mouth is. You have the personal experience. So if someone has something to say about Ukraine in a very direct manner, like you just did, which I'm going to completely concur with. All right. And I carry a resident permit of Ukraine, and I will 100% agree with you. I'm not going to paint a rosy picture because, yes, drunkards, people not taking care of their families the way they should or evacuating. And then you have the draft dodgers. You have those that are waiting for Russia, those that just want silence, pensioners. You nailed it. And It's the truth. And the truth being told is what will help Ukraine push towards victory more than painting a picture of roses that is always out there with people who don't really know the score. So thank you for sharing the truth like that. Now, over a year making this documentary, I want to say mention. I'm gonna say one word, and you tell me and tell the people watching how this has changed for the frontline areas. And we can talk specifically. In my opinion, of those I talk to, there's not really a zero anymore. I mean, there are zero line trenches and zero line positions, but it just moves and you have a gray zone because of a different type of warfare. But in your opinion, your experience making this documentary and spending so much time out there, how has drones changed in just 1 year? 1 year.
I mean, the most obvious answer is quantity. And quantity, while some of the drones might not be top shelf, it has a quality of its own. And you don't necessarily need to even make it impact with a drone to have a strategic advantage. I remember once I was at a training field with Skval. So these are prisoner soldiers in the Ukrainian armed forces who have decided to sign contracts with the armed forces in order to get out of prison time. And I see this like rinky-dink PVC pipe ground drone that they've strapped a machine gun to that honestly, I don't know if it could hit the side of a city, let alone a barn. But I'm imagining from the Russian perspective, you just hear like some bullets was over your trench and that suppresses your movement. I'm getting down. I'm ducking. And so a lot of the effect of how drones adjusted my work, adjusted the work of the people around me was, okay, we're going to have to wait another hour. Okay, we're going to have to wait another 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. When we were trying to get out of the city, we had 5 failed evacuations. That means we tried to get out into the van, into a truck to get out of there 5 times, but each time drones would be patrolling and we'd have to go back downstairs and wait and wait and wait. And when we actually did make the drive out, both on the drive in and on the drive out, we had to pull off the side of the road. On the drive out, we were illuminated by fires that had lit up the city of Pokrovsk. So there was drones patrolling, as you could clearly see us because an apartment building was in flames and we were being reflected in the orange light. So it's just the constant presence of 24-hour surveillance. It's the battlefield transparency and the quick responsiveness of the drones, where at the start of the war, I remember getting spotted by a drone and we took like 12 minutes to get out of there because it was like territorial defense. And it was like, okay, duck down, get in the tree. Wait, what do we do? And it took them like 18 minutes to hit where we were. That type of response time is unheard of at this point. And there will be drones that are already in the sky by the time they spotted you. And it could be as little as 30 seconds before they have something in the area that's lethal. That's if the drones don't just stumble upon your position, which is what is most common when you're moving to and from and a drone spots you. It's just they were going to see somewhere else. They see you, then they hunt you. The other big thing I would say that is different is now the prevalence of fiber optic drones. When I was in Pokrovsk and I was filming in Pokrovsk, that's when fiber optic drones really started to pick up. You really started to see more and more and more. And I know people say it looks like a spider web, but the line I keep saying from all these like lines of fiber optic cable that are covering these cities, it looks like the world's worst fishermen came to these cities, tried to catch something, and just having the worst day of their life. So it really does cover all the trees, all the buildings. And when you walk through the farm fields, it's as if it's a crop of its own. You could like go down and grab the fiber optic and get like a fistful of these wires as if the farmers were working to grow them. And I would say that the last thing besides the quantity of the drones and the fiber optic nature of the drones would probably be like the drone netting. Drone netting is now something that I see along the major pathways, which is helpful and does make you feel safe. But the problem is, if the Russians see a pathway that's covered by drone netting, they'll just shell it. They'll tear it apart, and therefore, like maybe you'll have 30% of what used to be there. But I will say that they are taking more anti-drone precautions on the Ukrainian side, which is greatly appreciative. And of course, and this is the big thing, range. Earlier, we're talking like 5 kilometers for these drones. Now we're talking 15, 20, 25, 30 kilometers. The question isn't whether or not the range is going to keep increasing. The question is, where will we start to slow down on the range increasing? And I don't really have an answer for that. But going into Kherson by car is now extremely dangerous. We just got back from Kherson, and the pathway into it, civilian cars and military have been hit by drones. So the human safari has expanded in range.
Yeah, they're hitting
that's
them
very
now
scary.
past Chornobyevka and all the way pushing up toward Mykolaiv. They'll just be on the side of the road when we were just down there in the same, we know the same roads, man. Well, I'll tell you this, and this will show you how the war changed, and I'll share something about the drone nets and a couple more questions about your documentary coming out tomorrow. But this, guys, is Sumy right here. And this is Kharkiv. And this is nothing operational. So the main road comes down through Trostianets, Kurivka, Bogodikiv, and you can come into Kharkiv, okay? Or you can go through Akhturka and then come up. All right, early in the war, Zhenya and I are out, and we spot a balloon flying in the air right here, a balloon. We literally go and investigate it, stop, and start walking to find out what it is. If we did that today, we would be dead in a New York minute. That is how much the war has changed. And we learned, and it was early. And I know there are people in the chat that have been on my channel from way back when. Remember us posting those pictures and video going, what in the heck is that? And then people were responding, that's a Russian radar balloon. And then we researched it. We were just walking right up to it to check it out. You would never, ever do that today. The other thing that I want to draw attention to is the nets. And I will not tell where exactly, but I'm going to leave the map out about here. And maybe I'll go in one more click. Yeah. Let's do this. I'm going to draw a line here, not that one, like this. Okay. And I'm telling you guys 100% that you see there where I drew. We'll just drop an indicator here. And I'll come all the way to the closest red, just 80 kilometers. 80 kilometers. There are now nets on roads, 80, 160 kilometers away from frontline, what you would consider frontline areas. It's completely changing. We ride through them quite often. You'd think, okay, it was just up where it's close. It used to be, but now that's changed completely. Let me ask
I
you-
was
Yeah,
always
go ahead.
worried about the drone nets and exactly whether or not people would act, because the problem would be, whose responsibility is it to put a drone net anywhere? You would think it's the military's, generally speaking, but then this question also comes to local governments and
That's
like, hey, are you
correct.
going to put drone nets around the local government buildings where people go to collect pension checks, or they go and they hide in the bunker? Are you going to put the drone nets around the gas stations, which are more commonly hit? We saw that some shaheeds hit a gas
Sumy.
station in Sumy. We saw that journalists in the Donetsk region were killed recently by a Lancet, which hit them in a gas station. Another Lancet almost killed a Turkish reporter, and another different embed, that was actual military embed, not just two people near a gas station. One of the gas stations we would actually hang out at quite a bit, traveling to and from. So I'm happy that the buck passing has stopped, relatively speaking.
We were coming through. I'm calculating what I want to say. We came through an area in part of this region out here in Donetsk region, And it was obvious that in one of these local municipalities that the town was putting drone nets over key governmental areas, as Dylan is explaining to you guys. And then we could see where there had been some like private companies or people hired to put some drone nets up over certain roads. But then we came to a different place where the military was actually installing the drone nets. And there was an incredible difference to what the military was doing. And for me personally, I was happy to see, because as we were getting closer, the military was doing it, but they were also there with air defense. You know, the guns mounted on the back of the trucks to shoot down Shaheeds, guys sitting there with shotguns while these guys are working. And it's just crazy that this is the kind of world that exists now, starting 60, 70, 80 kilometers as you push in. And we're just going to see this accelerate more and more. But I agree with you and concur. We're starting to see some more cohesiveness in working together. Let me ask you, this leads me to this, and then I want to play your trailer one more time. We'll play it full screen for you guys that are just joining us. This is Dylan Burns from Dylan Burns TV and Dylan Burns Live. He's dropping a documentary tomorrow on this channel here, Dylan Burns TV. If you have not subscribed, make sure you go and do so. Tomorrow, documentary dropping about Pokrovsk and about Avdiivka and the journey. So it's going to be incredible, but the title of it's Pokrovsk. Talk to me about, I know you spend a lot of time with soldiers, as I do. Your viewpoint on the morale of the Ukrainians right now, specifically military. It's important for people to hear.
I think the morale is largely where it has been for the last year. Morale is affected by a few things. One obvious factor that I think is covered quite a bit on the West is how much support they're getting. If you are in the front line and you're fighting against the largest country in the world, and you don't know whether or not the allies that are providing the ammunition necessary for you to do your job are going to be sticking through it for the next week, because they said as long as it takes. But I mean, I don't know. A long time could be expensive, and there's a bunch of other questions thrown out there. That has a real negative effect on morale. When people can see a pathway forward, when they can see a light at the end of the tunnel, when they can think of, I can go from point A to point B to point C, then I think people have an ability to plan the rest of their life, to build hope and to think about, this is how we have a pathway to victory. But a lot of times feels like, okay, we're at point A. Let's try to finish point A. Okay, we're focusing still on making sure we stay on the fact that we all agree that we should still get munitions. It's not, okay, we agree Ukraine should get munitions. How can we specialize in munitions? Can we send experts down on the ground who can tell them, hey, we can do this to actually increase the accuracy rate. Hey, this is how we can be more effective with the amount of ammunition we have, since we don't have enough propellant to just make endless amount of artillery shells. Mm-hmm. But instead, we're still stuck in the idea of like, well, should we even spend this money? Should we even be supporting Ukraine? And we always get back to the same conclusion. While yes, we should, but instead of, working towards that action and taking that action, it seems like we're just circling on this debate endlessly, especially with the current administration in the last 10 months of inaction, which has finally led to some form of sanction. But I remember hearing about it it's gonna happen in 24 hours. And so if you're a Ukrainian soldier, you hear 24 hours, and then it's been 10 months. I know I had an hour-long scheduling complaint today, but that's a little ridiculous. Okay, if I came on here 10 months from now, Greg, and I said, okay, I'm here to promote the documentary, I think that would be a little too far.
A little bit.
There's also I think a demonstrably negative impact on morale from the long lengths of rotations. I know some
Agreed.
people who are going to be in there for 3 days, and they rotate, and they got pretty good rotation schedules. And of course, if you're still on the most hellish part of the front, over 1/3 of all offensive operations are happening in this tiny area between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. And when you think of how big the front line is, that is a tremendous amount of offensive force, of offensive power. But if you're in this area and you're dealing with that offensive power, you're going to have to stay underground constantly
Mhm.
if you're in a frontline operating position. And sometimes I'll read these stories like, these heroes were in position for 160 days. Let's all give them a round of applause. And my first thought is, my God, 160 days. Now, that's not the commonality. The reason that's newsworthy is because that is very exceptional. But with drone dominance on the front line, it is more dangerous than ever to move to and from the position. And so the more you can minimize movement, the more you can minimize losses. So there's an incentive to keep people dug into a position as long as possible until you have no choice but to rotate them because they can't perform the job anymore. And that puts a lot of pressure on men and can be pretty grinding on morale.
Let me draw this for you guys here, and I'm gonna even tighten it up some. I'll come from the very western side of Pokrovsk, and let's just go to Chasiv Yar, where the assault's coming in. So he's talking about this line right here, and we know a huge conglomeration of Russian forces, Ukrainian forces, a lot of fighting. I know that doesn't tell you distance, but I will tell you distance now. Boom, not that one. Boom, to Chasiv Yar, 65 kilometers as the crow flies. So in a 1,500 kilometer front line, 65, 75, call it 100 kilometers is unbelievable amount of warfare going on. That is a great observation there. That's completely factual. Okay, we're going to play the documentary trailer one more time in just a minute, but without spoiling it, what's the one or two thing that you would consider most important for people to look out for in that documentary tomorrow? What are a couple special moments? You know, it's like a movie you watch and you go, okay, it's a great movie, but this part and that part's my favorite. What's your thoughts?
I think one has to be how frank the soldiers were with me. Something I really value is getting honesty from these soldiers. I think that you want to interview these soldiers as these events happen, because I see a lot of these World War II interviews, decades and decades after the fact, and I'll listen to their testimony, and these guys are trying their best, but it's hard to remember a battle that happened 50, 60 years ago. And, your complaint about your divisional commander telling you to dig in a hole that makes no sense to dig there because it doesn't have the view, and it's out in the field, it's not covered by trees. It's like that. Those types of details are lost with time. In 50, 60 years, you'll just say, yeah, we used to have problems with the commander. And so I want the detail. I want to know the frankness of what type of problems you're dealing with. And there are some parts of this documentary that, press officers were like, that it would be nice if you remove that. And if it's security related, we remove it. But if it is a soldier complaining about their commander, if it is a soldier complaining about a lack of ammunition, if it's a soldier complaining about their conditions, I always fight very hard to keep it in under basically every circumstance. And that was also the case in this documentary as well. And so I think what people should pay attention to is the problems within the Ukrainian military structure, issues with pay, issues with command, issues with just how soldiers have had to deal with the war, problem with them not having replacements, them needing, people to take their place, how volunteers who volunteered in 2022 said, I'm going to put my life on the line to protect my country, are now in a way getting penalized for the fact that they were willing to stick their neck out by the fact that a lot of people are not willing to take their place. And so I think the perspective of the soldier, the brute honesty of the soldiers in this documentary, I really do appreciate. Outside of that, I like the walking around Pokrovsk. I like seeing Pokrovsk. Not obviously, I don't like what I'm seeing, but I like it for the film and describing what Pokrovsk's like, is to just walk above ground, show the destruction, show how the war comes to home to Pokrovsk. Because for me, I saw the city transform and slowly break down over time, and so watching that process take place, while it is horrific, I think that it felt like watching almost like the natural evolution of how these cities are usually destroyed when the Russian army comes to town. So I think that for the purpose of display of this cycle, this evolution, I think it's very interesting.
Well, I will tell you this, guys, and I'm going to show the trailer again now. We'll show it full screen, and then I've got one more question for Dylan. So I've been coming in and out of Pokrovsk the entire war, and your timing, you nailed it. And I don't mean to say that in a way like, hey, man, you were there at the perfect time to tell this story, but you were there at the perfect time to tell this story over the last year. And now you tell me that the next city you're working in is Konstantin. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, as you already know, you're there at the right time to tell this story. So, man, I love these places, and I have spent a lot of my own time in both of those places. I couldn't think of two better cities for you to tell the true stories, because it's the epicenter of what's happening right now in the war. And guys that are watching this in the chat live, or you're going to be watching this later on demand, this video is dropping tomorrow, 8 to 9 a.m. Dylan Burns Standard Time. Hoping 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard, which would be 2 to 3 p.m. UA. It's dropping here. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you go and subscribe to Dylan Burns TV. I'm going to be one of the first to watch this tomorrow, because I'm going to set an alarm, because I love Pokrovsk and all the places you're going to be showing. I'm going to look and go, I know where that's at. I know where that's at. And I want to see it. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going to ask everybody watching, share the heck out of this. Everybody here watching right now, you have a social media platform. You have a YouTube channel. You probably have a Twitter or a Truth, or you have a Facebook page or Instagram. Share this documentary tomorrow, please. Let's see this documentary have the most amount of views for Dylan Burns TV than any documentary or video he's ever done, because this story needs to be told. Why is it so important? President Volodymyr Zelensky today was talking about Pokrovsk and how important, and the battle going on there. I translated that. You can go see it on my video from earlier today. It's important, and Dylan dropping this video at a perfect time. So without further ado, let's watch the trailer again, and then I've got one more question for you. Here we go.
Run. Ну, всі говорять, що в їхніх планах, типа, Покровськ взяти до зими. Ця точка їм стратегічно дасть дуже велику потужність.
Кожен день продовжується, цей чим раз тим більше, типу, ну.
Every hour, 10 minutes, there's explosion happening within the city.
Так хату на хаті б'ють і все. Бою днем і півночі.
Ну, это как будто вот какой-то зомби-апокалипсис прошелся в каких-то фильмах ужасов. Понимаешь, что рано или поздно дойдут, и оставаться здесь будет очень-очень опасно.
Дроны.
Drone. Съебать.
У нас попали ребята уже неоднократно под работу дронов.
Military or civilian, Russians love to blow it up, and it's easy to see.
0537! Оце в нас то, що в нас є засіб, який проти FPV. Вогонь!
Я вірю реальним станом справ на війні. Тут миром щось не попахує. А насправді треба бути сильним. Тоді, можливо, буде мир. Сильних не б'ють.
And there it is, guys. I see you already in the chat saying you're going to be sharing it. Thank you for that. Thank you to Joey T, FB8KV for gifting 10 memberships. And also Blonde Bombsheller, $10 super chat. Shout out to the wonderful people in the chat today. And that's what I would say as well. And I would say a huge shout out to the mods. They have done an incredible work today. Really interesting for me, because as I'm listening to that documentary, I hear pure Russian, I heard pure Ukrainian, and I heard English. And that's another message that I try to share with people, if not daily, regularly on my videos and updates. And it was interesting for me. it's a whole different world. We can go in and discuss that and analyze that. But I was hearing it. So I heard perfect pure Russian, and I heard perfect pure Ukrainian, and I heard mixture. And of course, some guys there speaking English. So what is your hope? Last question for you, and I'll let you get to your live, and I'm going to go play volleyball and get some exercise. My daughter is a volleyball coach. She's 23. She tore her labrum, just had shoulder surgery. So they need somebody to fill in on the volleyball team tonight, her fiance, and it's really pretty good level volleyball. So they've invited me, and I'm going to be playing volleyball tonight. Yeah, that'll be, maybe I'll live stream that for pure comment. No, actually, I love it. I have a lot of fun. So last question for you, Dylan. What do you hope comes out of this documentary? Take away people seeing it. That's, the world needs to see this, but what's your real hope, the message it can be delivered through this documentary? And I guess my last question would be, what'll make you smile at the end of the day about the work you've done here? Because from what I see, it's unbelievable, and I can't wait to see it tomorrow.
I think Pokrovsk is an example of a repeated pattern of behavior for Ukrainian resistance in these cities, where eventually the Russians destroy and end up taking these fortress cities, which can, it's not Kiev, it's not as millions and millions strong. We're talking about communities of 30,000 to 50,000.
63,000.
What would be referred to before the war as a small town.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-war. A pre-war would be referred to as a small town. But they were talking about taking Pokrovsk last winter. And so it's taken over a year more than they would rather it have taken. And it has been at much more cost than they would rather have taken it at. And because of that, Pokrovsk has suffered from the amount of destruction it has faced, from the amount of bombing it has faced, the amount of aggression it has faced. And this repeated behavior has also been the case at Avdiivka. It's also been the case at Bakhmut. It's also been the case at many, 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 many of these places that have become famous in the Ukrainian lexicon for their ability to create immense damage among those who are advancing. But nevertheless, the Russian army advances. And so my takeaway is that this cycle will continue to occur until the cycle is broken. I remember Vladimir Zelensky said, when he talked about where exactly do you want to be when it comes to history, where is your place in the history books? And he says, I want to be the leader that broke the cycle of Russian invasions of my country, that broke that historical trend, that broke that historical cycle that the country just keeps going into again and again. And I would hope that this cycle is broken, either through a cessation of hostilities or through the Russians being prevented from continuing forward. Because I think that some forces can only be stopped once they are stopped, not once they are asked to be stopped or they are convinced to be stopped, but once they are made to be stopped. And I think that this is probably one of those instances. So I would say that unless there are actions taken and the reforms that are necessary in the Ukrainian armed forces and the supplies that are necessary for the Ukrainian armed forces to defend and the decisions that are necessary to grind down the Russian war economy are taken, that I have no reason to believe that this will not be the next conversation in Konstantinivka will be whether or not it's about to be encircled and if the troops are going to get out in time, and adding more and more names to that list of tragic cities that have gone through this destruction, the murder of these communities is very tragic. But the thing that does give me hope is that irrespective of that cycle, irrespective of the time at the point that some people might say, it's hopeless. Some people would look at the situation and say it's hopeless after seeing it happen again and again and again. The Ukrainians keep resisting. They keep resisting harder, and the Russians keep finding more and more resistance. So I don't have any reason to believe that once the Russians occupy all of Pokrovsk and it is no longer a gray zone, which seems to be the inevitability at this point, that all of a sudden that part of the cycle, the resistance, the pain, the high cost that has to be paid isn't going to go away. And so I hope that eventually the cost becomes so much to bear that the Russians no longer can continue to abuse their neighbor, and they decide to go home and take care of their own problems.
Well, that's what we'll be looking for, and I think that's very, very well stated. I think you know as well as I know that the spirit of Ukrainians is unbreakable, and they're going to continue to fight. But you're right, as this continues, it will go from story after story. I mean, we can go back in the war early days, and I can call out cities like Severodonetsk, and you can remember how that was the big city, and we were dealing with that for months and months. And then, you know, Dylan, you were just given the history of other cities that we dealt with, and now it's Pokrovsk. But with that said, we fight and we do our parts. Everybody watching, you do your part. So your part, if you're watching this, Dylan and I both say thank you for being here for this live and for this premiere. Dylan, I want to say thank you for allowing me to premiere this. I feel honored, and for sure, you and I need to do more collaboration. I think that's easy to see. We've got good chemistry and a lot of good experience from being inside together, and I think we can bring a lot to people around the world with our understanding to help, you know, further their understanding of the reality inside Ukraine. But additionally, for everyone watching either live or tomorrow or on demand later on this live, make sure you go to Dylan Burns TV, subscribe there if you have not already. And tomorrow, when this documentary drops, share the heck out of it, and let's be a part of this story going viral. How about that? And getting out to the masses. So, Dylan, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for bringing me on, Greg, and keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Once again, thank you to everybody being here. Dylan, hang out in the green room 1 minute. Thank you for everybody being here. Huge thank you to our moderators, all of our team members, everybody on Discord. If you haven't joined Discord, and I know they've been dropping links, follow Dylan on all of his social media platforms. They've been dropping the Twitters and the BLUESKYs and all of these things. Just follow them and help us spread truth to the best that we can. You guys be blessed, and we'll be back at you.
Слава Україні!